All right, everybody, back with another installment of The Last Rep. I'm Bob Cicherillo along with David Baye, and we are back after a great Olympia weekend. And man, David, that is a whole bunch to take in, man.
Yeah, it was a good weekend. I flew in Wednesday, came home yesterday morning. I had a great weekend. I got a chance to get out and do Vegas a little bit when I was there for the USA's. I kept pretty low key, but hit up Fremont Street for my first time ever on Friday
Oh,
night. Man, I've been to Vegas. I can't tell
very
you how
cool.
many times. Never been to Fremont Street. Some good people watching. Got to see an '80s hair cover band. A lot of good first time stuff on Fremont Street on Friday night.
Oh, speaking of the '80s, I'd be remiss, David, if I didn't notice your Michael Jackson shirt. Actually, I think it's Michael Jackson. As you're leaning over,
It's
it looks like Lou Gossett Jr. and Enemy Mine.
yeah. The problem when I bought this shirt, it looked like a great shirt to buy, and if I stand up straight and stretch my stomach out, then it looks fine. The problem is where my chest overlaps my
Yeah.
stomach also happens to be where his eyes are,
Yep.
so he kind of starts looking like ET as soon as I'm standing there. So
It's definitely some ET quality. Wow, this show should be a real thriller, David.
it's
I'm
oh
guessing.
god, yeah, yeah. We'll see if we can beat the last one, right?
Oh, I got all kinds of puns with that one. But all right,
Oh,
listen, we got a lot to cover, man. I mean, this was a full Olympia weekend, and we're going to be talking. I'm going to be talking to Levrone in just a little bit, actually getting his thoughts on the weekend. So I'll start with
all right.
that. Your thoughts on the emergence of Kevin Levrone back on the Olympia stage?
Um, I got a little sentimental this weekend when we were talking about it, as a lot of guys did. And for me, I can talk all day about his physique and where his legs and his back were at and stuff like that. And I don't even want to go into it that much as an analyst. You know, he was not an Olympia caliber as far as physique goes. That being said, everything else about Kevin being at the Olympia this weekend was incredible. You know, for the fans, for the media, for the competitors. You know, Dexter Jackson. You know, for the guys that didn't see the press conference, Dexter was getting choked up. I mean, Dexter had to take a
Yeah, it
minute
was.
to close himself, talking about being able to compete against Kevin again. So for me as a fan, I started weight training in 1992, summer before my sophomore year, or excuse me, my seventh grade of football, and that's the same time Kevin, was making his rookie year a splash, and so I've been following him for the better part of 3 decades, and for me to be able to see him out on stage and everything like that, like I said in our videos and stuff, was an absolute honor. Where he wasn't competitive on the stage, but he looked absolutely fantastic for 52 years old. He inspired everybody there, from the athletes to the judges to the fans. And like I said, it was an honor seeing him on stage, and it was it was surreal, I guess. You know,
Well,
when they called.
I want to separate out Friday from Saturday. Obviously, the prejudging came. Kevin came out. It was very clear and evident right off the bat he was not going to be competitive in this lineup.
Right, right.
But when you're doing the job of play-by-play and analyzing, Saturday, you're a fan. I mean, you're watching this now, like you say. This is now. I introduced Levrone. He comes out, great ovation, and the music starts. Give me your thoughts on the routine. Like I say, Kevin back on, at that point from the fans' perspective now.
My favorite posing routine of all time is Kevin's routine from the 2002 Olympia. You guys can go look it up on YouTube. It's when he got runner-up to Ronnie Coleman. A lot of people argued he could have won. Jay Cutler sat out that year. He posted the exact same song, "Who's Got My Back Now" by Creed. And again, hands down for me, the best posing routine of all time. Kevin came out to the same song. So that was cool. He comes out to the same music. Everybody there, if you didn't have chills when he came out to that song, you weren't a fan of bodybuilding. He hit all his classic Kevin Levrone poses. The posing routine was as good as anybody's was that evening, and it was just a real treat for the crowd. And I think what happened on Saturday night is everybody, including myself, kind of forgot about prejudging on Friday. We forgot about the fact that he wasn't going to play. So you forget about the legs and the back being down, and you just enjoyed the moment of watching Kevin Levrone on stage doing what he does best, which is entertaining the crowd with his posing. Got a standing ovation, and that's what was neat about Saturday. We were able to step away from the judging, the placements. We knew all that was done, and just really enjoy the fact that you got to see a legend back on stage.
Yeah, and that was cool for me because obviously Kevin's a close friend of mine. We competed against each other. We've been friends, for 20-something years. So it was great for me to see him back in action and be able to actually announce Kevin on stage because that 2002 Olympia, I was competing in it with him. I wasn't really competing against him per se, but we were actually in the same show, David. So
Yeah, I remember your routine as well. You came out
yes.
for your finals. You had some sort of shiny, I believe Mike Razzo called him translucent, shiny, silky
Yeah,
Mike.
he did actually. Yeah, that's what
You're
he.
opposed to some opera music, and Mike's like, "Oh, you can just tell Bob loves being a bodybuilder." So
And I
watching that
miss.
pay-per-view, man, it was awesome.
I miss Mike, man. I mean, man, unfortunately, we lost Mike not too long ago, but he was so funny, man, with just that Boston accent and how he would put stuff out there. But I remember talking to Kevin backstage. We were like, man, here we are, man. Remember we were back at the Nationals in '91. Here we are, 10 years later on the Olympia stage. So it was cool, man. So it was cool for me to actually be up there to announce him, get him out there, and more importantly for me personally was to get him out right. I wanted to make sure he was center stage at the end of that routine, that the audience knew that this was something special, and obviously right on cue, 10,000 people stood in unison with a great, fantastic ovation. So
It was, I mean, it was awesome, man. I mean, there were some guys there that man, Marcus Rule saw an interview with Marcus Rule for one of the German, media outlets. Marcus was getting all choked up interviewing Kevin. I mean, it was, like I said, it's such a competitive sport, and there's so much testosterone and egos, and it's so competitive that you forget sometimes that people put a lot of heart and soul into this stuff, and you have idols and people that you look up to, and it was a sentimental weekend for bodybuilding, and it was special to be there. It's hard to put into words.
Well, you know what? The sentiment is there, and that was equally felt with all the fans in attendance. I'm going to turn our attention, David, to the placings now in our course, our predictions and all that. First of all, for all those that were doubting my Bob Cicherillo's abilities, you'll notice this hat right here with the IML logo on it. Shameless plug. I'm not eating it, David. I'm not even attempting to eat it. It's squarely on my head and in place. And you know why that is? Because I know what I'm talking about. If for any of you guys out there, and this is with all due respect and all those caveats that we got to put out there, okay? We all know all that stuff. There was no way on this earth Kevin was coming back with a few months of training, 13 years removed from the stage, at 52 years old. If you even remotely thought he was going to be competitive with forget about the top 15 or something, because if he had a little bit more leg, he may have actually made it that high. Top 10? Top 6, like I said, it'd be a miracle. The win for anybody out there, and I'm not singling anybody out, but there was people out there who thought he might win the show. Now, I am here to tell you, you may want to get into a different line of business because you have no clue about bodybuilding, man. What are you thinking out there, guys?
No, I mean, there was, like I said, it goes back to the sentiment and the nostalgia. And there's so many people who talk about how much better the '90s were than the 2000s and the 2010s or whatever we call where we're at now. And people that really believe that Kevin at his best would beat Phil, which is a whole nother argument. But Kevin's been away from stage for 13 years. He's 52 years old. Sean Ray, caught a lot of heat for his comments on Kevin, and I hate to ruin Sean's reputation of being an asshole, but Sean cared about Kevin going a lot more into this show than I think people realize. And I don't want to make personal conversations public business, but Sean and I had some conversations, and trust me when I say Sean cared about Kevin's well-being coming into this show. And one of the things that Sean said about Kevin that made a lot of sense is he's like, for as much as I love Kevin, what would it say about the current state of bodybuilding? Okay, what would it say about the current state of bodybuilding if a guy who's 52, trained 9 months, could come back and beat the best in the world? I mean, what would that say about the current state of competitors of a guy that's, like I said, 52? I'm going to train 5 months, come back, win the whole thing. I mean, that would be that would be a pretty bad sign for the times as far as how competitive the sport of bodybuilding is, and especially the Olympia. If Kevin could have won it. I would have loved to nobody more than me would have loved to see Kevin come out in his 94 or 99 or 2002 form or whatever. But to imagine that he was going to do that at 52, that's tough. And it was an interesting conversation that was had over the weekend in regards to Dexter Jackson and Danny Hester and Kevin. There were some comparisons between those three guys. Now, Dexter's 46 or 47, I believe. Danny Hester turns 48 next month. Kevin's 52. Now, there was so much talk about Kevin coming into the show being fresh. He's had 13 years off. His body's fresh. He hasn't beat himself up. Whereas when you talk to Dexter, and especially Danny Hester, Danny is very firm in his beliefs that the fact that he has been training hard all these years is what has allowed him to keep this physique. So, the discussion was, well, maybe all the time off, it wasn't necessarily a good thing for his body, or that break and, that long a time. I mean, muscle memory it's an incredible thing, but 13 years is a long time away from the stage.
Yeah, there's some big differences there. And, you're going to take a few years off, maybe you're fresh. You don't take 13 years off and you're fresh. You just haven't trained, and it was evident that obviously, listen, Kevin did a remarkable job for the amount of time he had to come back. That is Superman right there. That's exactly what we were talking about. I told everybody when we did this months ago, if anybody can do it, it's Kevin Levrone. I've seen this guy grow. I've seen him change. I've seen him do this. I've seen him do that. And that was all true. But that's as far back as you're going to go. Now, and I'm going to be talking to Kevin in just a little bit, David, but I got a chance to catch up a little bit before we got out of Vegas. He was blown away by these guys. He told me straight out, look, man, I got to be honest. I was back there thinking, holy crap, man. And you saw this guy and that guy. They're a lot bigger than they were in the 90s. Listen, you may like the 90s physiques better. And listen, that's up to personal preference. And I don't disagree. There was a lot of physiques in that era I thought were great. But times have changed, man. Whether it's for the good or the bad. These guys are absolutely huge. They're bigger, they're rounder, they're more muscular, they're more detailed at that weight. And look, if you go back from the 90s into the 80s, it's the same kind of difference. Listen, there were some great physiques in the 80s, Dave, but you can't compare them to the guys in the 90s. They were. No, there was
a lot of guys that were sub 200 pounds placing well in the 80s. And for as good as Lee Haney was, and I'll never take anything away from Lee Haney because he's the king of aesthetics and was able to carry a lot of size. It would be interesting to put somebody like Lee today next to a guy like Phil or Sean Roden. I think, aesthetics wise, he would compare better to Sean Roden than Phil.
Sure.
But just to see the size discrepancy over the generations. Now, and I hate to argue too much with you on this, but when you say that Kevin said the guys are bigger, I mean, the one thing you do got to remember is Kevin also competed against Dorian Yates. He competed against Marcus Rule, and he competed against Ronnie Coleman. Yep. So from top to bottom, the lineup at this Olympia might be bigger guys, but I don't think that anybody at the 2016 Olympia, minus maybe Ramy, was bigger than Coleman or Dorian Yates or Marcus Rule.
Well, I mean, he was talking in a general sense, obviously.
Yeah,
so,
but he's he's on stage with some monsters.
Oh yeah. Well, I want to get into the lineup. Obviously, to start from the top down. The minute Phil Heath walked out on stage on Friday night, I knew it was over. It was done. I've seen Phil enough. I know his physique. I've seen him walk out that same spot at the Olympia for 6 years in a row now. I know when he's on. I know when he's off. The minute he stepped into the light, I said, oh, there's number 6, man. He's on.
Yeah, I kind of had the same feeling, but not quite in like a dominating fashion. He came out and I said, you know what? He's good enough to win. The first Olympia that I covered for MD was the 2013 Olympia. And when he walked out on stage at the 2013 Olympia, it was just a collective, well, that's it. The show's over. I mean, before he even hit a pose. So when he came out this year, it was definitely better on Friday night than what we saw in previous years in 2014 and 2015. I agree with you that when he came out, it was like he's done what he needs to do to win. It wasn't for me like this total lights out, game over domination that you're hoping for from Phil. But yeah, from when he came out on Friday, you could tell that he probably had 6 in the bag.
Yeah, well, he was. I've traditionally seen Phil come out, and he's usually off a little bit Friday. Like I say, you're not overwhelmed. You're like, okay, let's see what happens, kind of thing. This time he was a little bit better than that, and that's what gave me the idea. You know what? If he comes back and proved Saturday even the same, but he finally got his stuff together for Friday night prejudging. Interestingly, as we go down, and I don't want to spend too long on Phil, only because, okay, listen, he won number 6. Great. I mean, there's just a lot of rehash there in terms of his physique. We know his physique, obviously, by now. He's very complete. He ain't missing a whole lot. His whole thing is whether he brings that conditioning and keeps that waistline small, and he certainly did that. What I want to get into more, David, was obviously we were there. We saw it live and in person. I got Dexter Jackson in second, and I got Sean Roden in third. Now, let me tell you why, okay? I think Dexter's more complete. I think Dexter was in phenomenal shape. I thought he compared better with Phil. But if you look at the pictures now, post-show, if you look at comparison pics with Phil and Sean Roden standing there, I don't think anybody would pick Sean Roden. I think you look at those comparisons and you go, Phil's beating him up all day long, right? But if you look at pictures of Phil and Dexter, you can make a case. So it's interesting to me that they end up going that way. At the end of the day, though, I had Dexter Jackson second place solid.
Yeah, you know what? You know what bothered me a little bit. It seemed like for the second year in a row on Friday night, Sean Roden came out and really just relaxed his stomach and just kind of let it go. Now, Sean is one of these guys where he's arguably got the best aesthetics out of anybody in that Olympia lineup in one of the smallest waists. I mean, the difference from Sean going through his poses and hitting his ab shot were night and day. I mean, he hit that ab shot. His waist looked like it was, 25 inches around. But Sean came out and he really relaxed his abs, and his lower abs, I mean, they weren't hanging out like, you get some of these guys who just really overeat. We've seen Ruley just let it go when he tries filling out too much. But, so it wasn't like that. But Sean's stomach was still hanging out. He was being real lax in his posing. He wasn't being aggressive at all. He still looked fantastic. You're talking a guy top 5 in the world.
Of course.
But he just wasn't, he wasn't where he needed to be. And in 2014, I had Sean Roden as the winner. And I'll still argue that he should have won. But these last 2 years, he's just come out, and there's been just that lack of pop on Friday night that we're used to seeing from Sean Roden. Now, I had heard that he did on his lower right abdomen have some hernia work done a couple of years ago or something like that.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, he may be having some issues with the mesh that they used that might be kind of sort of resurfacing. So that might have something to do with it. But, if you know Sean personally, he's such a laid-back guy, and he's real chill, and he's real cool, and a fun guy to hang around. But it's almost like you gotta turn it up when you get on stage, man. You gotta get into the next gear, and I just don't think he did that. And I think from the back, really, that Dexter probably beat Roden in those shots. Roden's back has come up, but I still would have favored for Dexter second. And I'm going to specify on Friday because I think things flip-flopped a little bit on Saturday. But I would have probably had Dexter in second for that night too.
Well, Dexter's complete, and I think that's where he beat Sean Roden. Listen, Sean Roden's a phenomenal athlete. We both know that. Yes, he was very lax in those, especially towards the end of the prejudging. Steve Weinberger, the head judge, was putting those guys through the ringer. Ain't nobody bitching they didn't get a chance, to compete and to get it compared. He put them all over, flip-flopped them back and forth, whatever. But you could tell towards the end, he was getting, I don't know if he was just sucking wind or if he was just, hurting down there. But yeah, the front double Baye in particular wasn't looking very impressive. He was getting tired, I'm thinking. But Dexter, to me, is the most complete guy up there. And you can even make an argument over Phil. Again, ain't missing nothing. Now, yeah, Phil's calves and Dexter's calves are two different worlds. I know we're going complete physique here. But, man, he's put together. Side chest is the best in the entire show. I don't care who's putting one next to him. He's the only one that hits it properly still. I thought he was phenomenal. Like I say, the judges had their work cut out. But the problem I got there is that in the arm department and in the back department, Dexter's killing Roden. It's not close. And that's where I got an issue with, them putting Roden ahead. You can't. It's easy to get sucked in with Roden because he's got that, like you say, that tiny waist, those nice big flaring thighs that start right at his hip abductors. They're absolutely beautiful shaped legs, and it's easy to get caught up in it. And he poses, he displays very well. But I think if you really pick them apart, I got to go with Dexter, man. I got to go with the blade in second.
Yeah, no, I mean, when we're talking about these guys and picking apart their physiques, it's like it's trying to say what's wrong with like Cindy Crawford or
Right.
why she's not hot. So you have to be picky at this level. But yeah, from a complete standpoint, I think Dexter would have been ahead of Roden a little bit, and I think Dexter felt that way, but Roden felt he was ahead of Phil. So
Yeah, of
but I
course.
did want to touch just for a real quick second on what you said about Steve putting the guys through the ringer. And one of the complaints that we've seen over the last couple of years is you have your first call out, second call out,
Right.
third call out. And the argument that the fans were making, and it's a very fair argument, is like, okay, well, if you have your first call out, yeah, you can put your guys in first, second, third, and maybe they shouldn't be compared against some of the other guys. But the guys who are the bottom two of the first call out, they should be getting compared against the guys who are the top two or three of the second call out.
Agreed.
And so on and so forth, moving down. You can't have a first call out and say, okay, well, these are my top five guys, and this guy's in fifth in the first call out, and you can't not put him next to the guy you have in the next call out, because you got to look at them next to each other, and they did that. They did it all weekend with every single division. So we saw, and it was almost a shocker to me. We saw Ramy and Rulli in the second call outs. I mean, here's the guys who made the first call outs, and Steve goes to call the second call out, and you see Ramy and Rulli back, and then all of a sudden you have Cedric and McCarver, and they're flip-flopping these guys, and Bonac, and all these guys are all over the place. So everybody got a fair look. Cedric talked at the press conference, I just want a fair look. He got his fair look. He got to stand next to some of the guys that were in the top call out. You didn't get to see Cedric stand next to Phil, and I don't think we needed to see that. But it was it was made for a long show for all the divisions. But when the athletes put in that much work to get to the Olympia, they deserve that. The fans deserve it, and so it was nice to see them go through as many rounds of call-outs as they did.
Yeah, they did a lot of what I call crossover comparisons, which is exactly what you're talking about. Bring up 5 or 6 guys, whatever it might be. Get your order kind of tentatively for what you're looking at that point. Yeah, if you think you got your top 3 or 4 guys, dismiss them and leave those 2 guys, and I'll bring up some other guys. And they did a lot of that, which I loved. And like I said, a lot of times they called back 2 guys that just got off the stage. So listen, kudos to the judges, because, like I say, that's not an easy job. Again, you're splitting hairs at this level in terms of the Olympia. Could this guy have been? I mean, we're all over the boards today, David. This guy should have been there. Well, this guy could have taken second. Look at. I can make a case for Bonac being second or third. He's that damn good. Now, could you make a case for it? Yeah. At the end of the day, it's still a preponderance of the scoring.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
You have to pick people. Somebody has to get first.
Right.
Somebody has to get second. Somebody has to get third. And you could poll 100 different people, and you'd get 99 different answers as far as who should have been first, second, third, fourth.
Sure.
It's not like there's you might have people who say there's unanimous, like this is the guy who should have won. But like I said, you take 100,000 guys off of the MD boards and say, okay, give me your first through 10th place, and
there's a lot of different answers.
They're going to be all over the place. Yeah, exactly.
Well, like I say, some are justified, some are, and yeah, some you can make a case. It's like, look, I would have had no issue, as we work ourselves down the line, because this now is where you get tight, which we knew going into the show. We knew kind of who the big 4 were, so to say. What you didn't expect was, and by the way, I'd pat myself on the back, but I can't really reach my back. My dark horse pick, David, as you remember, William Bonac. Let me tell you something. Ain't no dark horse no more. This guy is real. He showed up to fight. He gave these guys everything they can handle. I would have had no problem with Bonac being over Big Ramy, especially Friday, because he was a lot better Friday. Saturday, Ramy did turn it around, and he was impressive. But I tell you what, Big Ramy, I want to somebody keep in the order. Big Ramy, came in there, and we finally saw a little glimpse of what this guy has to offer. If he came in on Friday like we saw him Saturday, that would have been interesting.
Yeah, one of the things that we've been saying for the last couple of years about Ramy is wait till he shows up really shredded. Wait till he shows up really shredded. And Friday night was probably the most shredded we've ever seen him, and also the flattest we've ever seen him.
He was flat.
For as big as he is, and this might sound kind of outlandish, but the wow factor was almost gone a little bit. Now mind you, Rulli came out ahead of Ramy, and Rulli's wow factor was just off the charts. So by the time Ramy came out, everybody was kind of oogling over Rulli. But Ramy came out and he was flat. He was very lean on Friday, and I think if you look, I was looking at the scorecards earlier. There was a couple guys he was behind on Friday that he jumped on Saturday. Now, I caught a little bit of heat for this on Saturday, but I'm not backpedaling out of this one because this is what I believe. I think you take Ramy on Saturday night. It's a one-day show, a Saturday night judging. Ramy wins for me.
Yeah,
I
you know
think from
what?
I think from a physique standpoint, I think he's
Yeah.
just as impressive as Phil from a physique standpoint. He's very balanced. His conditioning was very good. Does Phil have him in the hams and glutes and a little bit of detail and a back double bicep? Yes. But I think you take Ramy on Saturday night and the competition is judged then. For me, Ramy is your Mr. Olympia. But he was so far down on Friday. I mean,
Sure.
you got to remember on Friday night, even at that second call out, the judges
Yeah.
had Ramy pushed towards the outside. It was odd watching this guy that has just been blowing everybody's minds for the last 3 or 4 years come out, and you were kind of like, he's not
Well,
doing
let me
it.
let me tell you something, David. I saw somebody had a comparison picture that they showed me, and somebody took the time to put a front double bicep picture of Ramy from the last 3 years together on the Olympia stage in the exact same spot from the same photographer, 1, 2, and 3. And as I looked at him, and I knew each year from the backdrop, the most impressive shot was from 2 years ago. It was the first Olympia he did. His biceps were so big in that first. I mean, he was. But you're right. I know exactly what you mean when you say, he lost a little bit of that wow factor. When he walked out that first year, I was blown away with how big he was and how round and all that. Last year was in the middle there somewhere. It was still impressive, but this year, yeah, when he walked out, I was like, man, I think he's a little flat, man. If you look at the pics, and this will surface on the internet, you'll see it. It's a noticeable difference. He's a lot flatter than he was the first. Whatever he did in between Friday and Saturday certainly perked him back up. He got his conditioning got sharper, probably from posing, and probably dropped 10 pounds of water, while he was sweating it up there. But he's impressive, man, and I'm sticking with what I've always said. He's still got the best shot to take out Phil if anybody does.
Absolutely.
Any of the other guys, they brought their best. They brought their A game, man. We've seen it from Dexter. We've seen it from Roden. They ain't beating Phil unless Phil comes in noticeably off. Ramy actually can do that. I still think Cedric, has the potential to do that, although I'm not so sure we're going to see that realized. And we'll get into Cedric in a moment. But that brings me to Bonac. And I tell you what, boy, if there is a guy who, if this guy didn't impress you, then you ain't a bodybuilding fan. I mean, he is hard as a stone. He is packed with muscle from head to toe. He's got what a lot of guys don't have these days. We talk about the difference between the 90s and today. It was separation of muscle groups. And he's got it, David. Everything cleanly defined. Everything round. He's got that fresh popping muscle. Like he's a young guy still. He was impressive, man.
Yeah, and you got to remember, this is a guy who I think didn't he do the 212 like 4 or 5 years ago?
Yeah,
or
he did.
something like that. I mean, so here's a guy, and we could start talking about Flex Lewis making a jump to the open, which isn't happening. But anyhow, you can talk about how much progress he's made over the past couple of years. Even he was, I believe, 15th 3 years ago. Cracked the top 10, 8th last year, and all the way up to 5th this year. And like you said, there's arguments where you can place him higher. But we talk a lot about people filling out their frames in the sport. So-and-so needs to fill out their frame. He's like overdone his frame. I mean, there is so much. He's carrying around so much muscle. You scratch your head about thinking like, okay, well, where can he actually make improvements? I mean, I don't know. There's a couple guys who have a little bit better V taper, who might be a little bit wider from shoulder to waist in their back shots, but he's got so much muscle in his back. So when he's hitting those shots, it's not, there's just slabs of muscle. His back double bicep is crazy. And he brings solid conditioning every time. I don't know that anybody even knows what an off William Bonac looks like because
Yeah.
he's been on the money every time. He works with Neil Hill. Those two really seem to have everything figured out, and a nice guy, and came out there, and just impressed the hell out of everybody.
Well, he bumped up considerably from last year, along with our boy Dallas McCarver, who jumped up a whole bunch of spots. But
Yeah.
Ruley Winkler was truly a beast, as his nickname suggests. I tell you what, boy, he put on some muscle in the offseason. We all saw that. The anabolic chicken or whatnot, whatever they got going out there he was talking about. I tell you what, something worked because he was good. He kept his midsection in control for the most part. And the audience loves him. I mean, he's just got tons of beef. If there's a critique, to me, it's that, dare I say it, David, he's almost a little bit too big for his frame, where it's starting to take away. Yeah, no, it's bodybuilding blasphemy, my friend, to ever say the word too big in bodybuilding. But in his case, it's true. Yeah, he's a lot bigger. Yes, he's more muscular. Yes, he's more freaky. He's also a little bit boxier. If there's a critique I have, it's that he's a little bit square now, just because he's so freaking big. His posing still needs to improve, but it's better than it was.
Yeah.
But I got to be honest, as freak factor as he is, he's still, listen, he's put together, man. There's no question about it. He just doesn't flow as well as some of the guys out of him. I'm not so sure I have him up anywhere higher than where he was.
No, I talked to Rulli on Saturday too, and he was hoping to get a few spots higher. For me, the most entertaining part of the whole weekend, from the competition standpoint, aside from seeing Kevin on stage, just make that very clear. Aside from seeing Kevin's posing routine, the most entertaining part of the whole weekend for me was when Rulli came out for prejudging on Saturday night, because there was just a collective, like, what the hell are we looking at? And I mean, it was crazy. He kept his stomach tight. He's hitting those shots, and his most muscular is so huge. The crowd was going nuts. And there's we talk so much about aesthetics and stuff like that, but there's still a really huge portion of the bodybuilding fan base that loves your freaks. And in the 90s and the early 2000s, Marcus Rule, had his fan base, even though he was never going to win an Olympia. And you have your Ramy now, but Ramy still has some good aesthetics. So for as freaky as he is, he's just not. I don't know. To me, he wasn't the freak show that Rulli was. And like I said, Rulli came out, crowd went nuts. His most muscular was just off the charts. His arms are probably the most cartoony that we've ever seen. I said, man, he's going to push Phil. He's going to push Phil looking like this. And as soon as they went through the comparison groups, before even the call-outs, you saw him lose a little bit of ground. Because you stand him next to the other guys, it's not like he's losing size, but aesthetics and structure, he isn't quite at a spot where a Dexter or a Sean Roden is at. On the flip side of your argument, and Flex Wheeler was on the same point as you. Flex actually said he would like to see Rulli come down about 10 pounds of muscle and sharpen up. My concern with that would be, okay, let's say he comes down 10 pounds of muscle and he just looks the same frame, the same structure, just a little bit smaller, and he doesn't really increase anything. I mean, there's it's bodybuilding. It's a muscle show. There still has to be some room for the freaks. Yeah. And so, maybe Rulli's never going to be a Mr. Olympia. Maybe he's never going to be top 3. But, he's carved out a niche market being the freak. And the fans, I mean, his fan base is growing and growing and growing. Oh, yeah. And the other thing with Rulli and his fan base, the more he's out there and the more people get to know Rulli, he's a really likable guy. Him and his brother Quincy are about as much fun as as you're gonna find in this industry. And so, like I said, the more Rulli gets out there at the expos, the more you see him on the mic, you realize he's a really fun guy, but has a freak factor that nobody else has. So I think the fans love the way he looks now, and I'm almost on the flip side. Like, sure, I want to see how. I mean, for as freaky as he is now, what would he look like with another 10 pounds of muscle on him? Yeah. That's kind of where I go with it.
I think you can make that case. He definitely has his fan base out there. They absolutely love him. And make no mistake, they were not chanting Rulli when he announced him in his placing. They were booing. So
he got some, probably the loudest boos of the weekend.
Yeah.
I think we're between David Henry getting 5th and Rulli getting 6th. But like we said before, you got to place somebody somewhere, and there's a very good argument for the guys who placed ahead of Rulli being ahead of Rulli. But 6th in the world ain't too bad.
Nothing to sneeze at there, my friend. Trivia question, Dave, for 100 points and control of the board. What is Rulli Winkler's real name?
Clarence? I don't know.
Close.
No, I don't know.
Eggburton.
Wow. That would have been the exact last thing I would have guessed was Eggburton, but Rulli sounds a little bit cooler when you're announcing it. So
yeah, absolutely. It's funny to see some of the real names. A lot of people don't know Kai Green's real name, although I'm pretty sure you know that one.
No, I don't.
Oh, David, it's 0 for 2, man. Kai Green's real name, Leslie.
I did know that.
You knew that one, but All right, listen, we got some impressive names here still to go.
Yeah,
This thing was loaded in the middle, David. I mean, we knew that kind of going in, no question about it. I got to be honest, man. I was very impressed with Josh Larnowitz, the Thunder from Down Under, the King of the Gym, making his Olympia debut and all that good stuff. You know, he's such a likable guy. He was so excited to be there. We got to that press conference, and Kevin ends up peeling off his jacket, and challenging anybody. Cedric was out there, and I look right at him, right dead in the eye, and I go, "Get out there!" And he goes, and he kind of does like one of those, "Me?" And I go, "Yeah, get out there, man." And he's like, "All right."
yeah.
And
I tell you what, the press conference was a lot of fun. And for the people who follow the press conferences, it's like if there's not a lot of drama and the guys don't talk too much trash, things get a little boring. So it was nice to see a couple of guys peel off. I remember seeing the press conference, pictures and stuff from the early 2000s. Ronnie and Gunther would peel off, and everybody would, now it's like everybody wants to stay covered up. So it wasn't any surprise that Kevin, being an old school guy, was the first one to peel off. But it was cool seeing Josh get up there. One other thing that I wanted to kind of point out that I don't know that everybody necessarily knows, and Josh did a really good job of explaining it. He's a super humble guy, really nice, and he wanted to take a second to address his nickname, the King of the Gym.
King of the Gym.
And he did a good job in saying that. He said, I don't want anybody to think that when they call me King of the Gym that I think I'm better than anybody else, or that I think my place at the gym is higher than anybody else, or anything like that. He's like, we don't have a lot of, IFBB pro bodybuilders from Australia. He's like, so a lot of the younger guys, look up to the pros, including myself. And he said, so when I think of myself as King of the Gym, he's like, it's a leadership role. I'm there to help inspire other people. I'm there to help the younger guys out. I'm there as a leader. So, it's hard. When you know Josh and you've had a chance to talk to him, this is the last guy who's got ego issues at all. But you see, it's a King of the Gym. You're like, But he did a really good job of explaining it. From a competitive standpoint, Josh is a guy that's just going to keep going up from here. He's got a really big frame. He's got a lot of room to put on muscle. I think he was a little bit sharper in his first 2 pro wins last year.
Yeah.
In fact, I still think his win at San Marino, I wasn't there, but I saw pictures, I think was probably his best yet. But he has put on some good size since then, and sometimes the additional size, or the pressure to have additional size at an Olympia level might cause you to lose a little bit of conditioning. But he was still in really good shape. And him coming in 9th place, his first Olympia. He's not a rookie, but he just turned pro at the end of last year, so he's been competing as a pro for less than a year. For him to be top 10 at the Olympia, arguably one of the best bodybuilders from Australia of all time, other than Little Lee. It was really cool seeing him on stage. He beat out guys like Justin Compton and Nathan Dash and some of the other younger guys, and I think, barring some kind of injury, I think he's one of these guys we're going to see in the top 10 for a lot of years to come.
Well, when that nickname runs its course, we'll shorten it to KOTG, and then we'll kind of go that route with Josh. So he did good, man. Yeah, he did really good. I mean, I was really proud of him. Tony Doherty was ecstatic. Obviously, that's his boy. It was great to see Tony out there, by the way. Tony, for those who don't know, puts on the Art of Australia show, and, man, he just loves the Olympia weekend. Big country.
Dallas. Yeah.
Big country. Lived up to the name, bro. He was bigger than life.
Yeah.
Once again, I mean, he had a real good spot. I mean, he did great. Let's face it. He bumped up a whole bunch of spots from last year. I still think he could have been a little bit higher. I don't quite know what they didn't like there, but, I mean, he kind of had it all. And for all this talk about how weak his back is, I don't know what people are looking at. Listen, can his back be a little bit better? Sure, but it's not weak. It's just not as good as everything else.
Yeah, I mean, you get a couple guys. If you see a side-by-side lat spread with Cedric in Dallas, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that Cedric beats him in a lat spread. A little bit more V-tape. Frame-wise, that's the other thing that you have to take into consideration. Once you got outside of 5th place with Bonac, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th, you're talking Rulli, Cedric, Dallas, Josh, and Justin, all guys with very large frames. So, it was tough. It was tough comparing those guys. But, I don't think Dallas was quite as sharp as he was last year at his Olympia debut, but bigger and more complete. And so definitely, worthy of a top 10 spot. I talked to Dallas a little bit after prejudging on Friday, and they bounced him around a lot. So normally, after prejudging, it's like, okay, I was in the middle of the second call out, so I'm 6th or 7th place, or I was on the outside. They move these guys around so much that a lot of these guys had, and including us,
No idea.
no idea where anybody was going to be. And Dallas was a little bit worried, that he might have placed a little bit lower than where he ended up. And and I talked to him a little bit, and he's like, I'm not sure where I'm at. I'm like, oh, you're at the Olympia and you're 25. That's
that's where you're at.
That's where you're at. You're at the Olympia and you're 25. So wherever the chips fall, and that's that's encouraging, but it's not a lot of comfort for some of these guys because that's not Dallas's mindset. He might be 25 and competing against the best in the world, but he's here to chop heads off and to win. But it was a really good placing for Dallas. And again, he's another one of these guys where, barring some sort of injury, I don't see him slipping from the top 10 for quite a while.
No, listen, he's a great addition to the new generation that's coming out here with Josh and Compton and the rest of these guys. So congratulations to Dallas. Big country coming in big at the Olympia stage. That brings us to my man said. Cedric McMillan may have been the most talked about guy at the Olympia over this weekend, past Phil Heath himself. It was interesting to see his reaction. Now, on his placing, of course. Now, clearly he thought he should have placed higher.
Right.
The audience, obviously, very much Cedric fans, they booed that one, of course. They didn't like that. He clarified that for me at the seminar that we did on Sunday, because obviously that was the first place I was going. And he wanted to make perfectly clear that he did not mean to be disrespectful in any way. That was, and he kind of turned to the guys, because, everybody was kind of high-fiving and fist-bumping when they would get called. And he just literally stepped out and then kind of, had his head down and kind of composed, tried to compose himself. But then he turned to the guys with the kind of the fist up in the air, like, all right. And he says, look, I was just in my own zone. I wasn't really, and he made some mention of being, I guess he really likes Kevin Levrone. He liked the idea that he came back. He's really kind of into that. And he mentioned to me something about, he wanted to place higher because he wanted to exchange checks with Kevin or something if he got a higher check or it was something kind of convoluted and strange, but you could tell he meant it good from the heart. But I was like, he said, man, just take your check and put it in your pocket, bro.
Yeah, it was a little bit of an awkward moment at the press conference, and Cedric is he's not a guy who's afraid to talk about how much he idolizes the other guys in the sport, how much he looks up to these guys. But when he started talking about trading paychecks with Kevin, I was like, and I don't know Cedric on enough of a personal level to know his financial situation or anything like that, but that's a lot of money to just turn around and hand somebody on a on a
great to have you back.
Yeah, I'll buy Kevin a dinner and take him out to a movie or that's
Right.
you get what I'm saying. But I'm not giving him a 5-figure check anytime soon. I love you, Kevin, but not that much. But I talked to just about all the guys afterwards. Had a chance to kind of and for me, from a media standpoint, it was more of a congratulations. And I know a handful of these guys fairly well enough from over the last couple of years. And I'm going to tell you right now, there wasn't anybody other than Phil Heath that was happy with the place. Show. I'm not gonna say names or who said what or whatever.
You don't have to. It's all of them. It's, I had the same thing. I've never met a collection of everybody that was pissed off. I mean, I didn't honestly, short of. Well, actually, I honestly short of anybody really. I mean, honestly, like everybody thought they should have placed higher. Not that that's unusual on a bodybuilding show, but I kept searching myself to say, what? I wonder if, can I find just somebody that was kind of just like ecstatic to a place. I'll tell
you the one guy, and like I said, I'm not gonna get into who said what about their placings, but the one guy that did seem pretty happy was William Bonac. He was like, man, from 15th to 8th to 5th, and obviously he's looking at the guys who placed ahead of him. He was happy, but yeah, there was a lot of people who felt they should have placed higher, and like we can beat the dead horse. These guys are all competitors; they all come to win, whether they know Phil's there or who's else.
Minus 1 or 2 spots, literally. I mean, I got almost the exact order that the judges got. Like I say, I've got Dexter switched, with Roden. I could have had Bonac up a spot. Literally, there's a couple. Cedric McMillan is difficult to place. He doesn't look like the other guys. He doesn't match in there. We talked about this ahead of the time, David, where I've always contended that you need some like kind out there. You know, Dallas is the only guy that really that matches up with Cedric in terms of height and size out of that entire crew. There is no more Wolf out there. You would need a guy like that to actually be up there to maybe, bring in some comparison. So he has work cut out for him. Now, that said, I thought he looked great. I thought Cedric was pretty much on the money. He just, for his frame, he doesn't carry the same mass as, some of the other guys. Cedric looks phenomenal and huge until he stands next to Big Ramy or on a scale, even a William Bonac, who's got more muscle per square inch than Cedric does, or maybe than anybody on that stage. So I thought he was placed fairly. I can't think of a guy ahead of him that I would have put ahead of him.
No, I thought it was a fair placing for Cedric as well. To me, and this is really nitpicky. His legs to me look like they may be just a hair down from where he was at the last couple of years. His conditioning always seems to be pretty similar. It's like really good, but not like lights out. And for as big as he is, for as massive as he is, I think if he could have his legs a little fuller and show up just really, really shredded, that's when you have him pushing the top 2 or 3 guys. Now, I would like to make a really cool note about Cedric that we found out Sunday at the press conference. He came out for his posing routine Saturday, and I was like, this is awesome. I mean, this posing routine was money. He's hitting all these poses, great transitions. I mean, it was awesome. And then you find out Sunday that wasn't his music. It was somebody else's posing music, and he just decided to go with it. Some competitors would be like, "Okay, stop. This isn't my music." He said he just listened to it, and he's like, "Okay, I can work with this." And he just went and posed. And he said at the press conference, he's like, "I was thinking as long as they didn't cut into some 50 Cent, because some of the guys will start off slow."
Right.
I mean, but it says a lot, and is a lot of credit to Cedric about how much he looks at posing as an art form, to where whatever music they threw at him, he was going to make a really good routine. And I think there's a lot of good posers like that. I think you take somebody like Dexter, you take somebody like Hidetada. These guys take 2 seconds to catch the music and are like, all right, I can do this. I mean, I know just on my level, I'm driving down the street and I hear a song come on the radio. I'm like, yeah, I could probably pose to this. And you're like going through poses in your head. Something else comes on. Oh, this would be cool to do a routine to. So it was really funny to find out that his routine, which minus Kevin's was my favorite of the weekend, was completely ad-libbed to somebody else's music.
Now, that's amazing. And like I said at the seminar, it's a testament to how much of a professional he is in terms of his ability to pose and display. B, I sincerely believe you could put on the 6 o'clock news, and this guy could make a routine out of it. He's that good. Physique-wise, though, it lands him where it lands him. Again, respectable. He's got nothing to hang his head about by any stretch. That brings me to Justin Compton. And Justin was another one that I couldn't immediately put a finger on where to put him. He was good, but he wasn't great. He was cut, but he wasn't ripped. He's put together, but he's not really missing anything. But so he's kind of right in the middle of it all. But I think he's another one that he's got so much muscle on his frame that he almost needs to come down a little bit to get that separation back. I still think he was better and more separated at the Europa that we saw him win.
Yeah, his 2014 Europa, and that's the thing is in Justin's case, and I feel a little bit bad for him. Because everybody, every year is different. You're even from an age standpoint, aging a couple of years, you're training a little bit different. You're working with a different coach. You're doing a little bit different diet, different lifestyle, whatever. Every year is going to be a little bit different. But from here moving forward, Justin is going to be consistently compared to his 2014 Europa showing. Now, Justin was in really good shape in Sacramento. He was in really good shape in Asia. He was in good shape at the Olympia, but he was in ridiculous shape when he won the Europa in 2014. Now, it's hard to say because he's not standing next to the other guys. But, I would venture to say if you take Justin from the 2014 Europa, he's moves up ahead of Cedric in 7th place. I'm not going to put that physique ahead of a Rulli or a William Bonac, but I think he moves up. So I still think Justin has, the potential to move up a handful of spots. but he's got to come in absolutely shredded. And he's got, like you said, he's got so much muscle where if he comes down a few pounds, people aren't going to look at Justin and be like, oh, he's downsized or whatever, you know. And you know, and I suppose when we're talking about Rulli, you know, you're like, oh, well, he lost some size, a little bit of wow factor. But Justin needs to bring a little bit better detail. Like you said, he's got a very complete physique. The only thing for me that Justin could use a little bit more of in his side shots, he's got a little bit of a straight hamstring.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't have that real deep belly on his hamstring in his side shots. You know, now his side chest and his side tricep, because he's got 50-inch arms, are still incredible shots for him. But head to toe, if I had to, like I said, and I've said this before, if we're being really nitpicky, I'd like to see a little bit more hang on his hamstrings. But it was, you know, it was a top 10 finish at the Olympia for his first Olympia. And again, you know, we put so much pressure on these guys, like, oh, he wasn't the first call out. It's like, it's, you know, it's the Olympia.
Right.
Look, wasn't the first call out. So for him to be in the top 10 at his first Olympia, you know, and he's only 26, 27 years old. That's what we forget about Justin. He's still pretty young. You know, so Justin's got a lot of, you know, a lot of years to make improvements, and he doesn't really have that much to make in the way of improvements. But it was a good showing for Justin. But I think it was a very fair placing for him.